Well, let's stay break here on Arise News, and it's time for the press preview. First look at what's on the front pages of the papers, and we start as usual with our sister publication, This Day newspaper. And on the front page of This Day, you read that Usman, how Dambazau resisted pressure to topple Jonathan. And then, of course, with some riders, says he made a promise to international community he wouldn't. Ex-army chief proposes drastic reform of entire security sector. Declares size of military police inadequate for Nigeria's population. Buni cautions against hate speech, says nation's interest uppermost. All right. Let's look at the orange strip there. In New Zamfara law, terrorist informants, kidnappers face death penalty. It also has two riders there. It says Matawale bans political activities, rallies. Buhari names Rear Admiral Musa as pioneer coordinator for National Counter-Terrorism Center. And then just there above the nameplate, FDR's meeting ends in deadlock. Buhari eliminating malaria by 2030 will save Nigeria 2 trillion naira.
The Guardian. Nigeria this morning, leading headline: wealthy Nigerians, middle-class youths in web of naira shorting. Let's take some riders. Country at risk of all-time high money laundering. Request for dollar-dominated accounts spike. And those two leading photos there. The first one is of the president at the inauguration of the Nigeria End Malaria Council at the Presidential Villa yesterday. And just below that, you have the presidential candidate of the Labour Party meeting Governor Wike in Port Harcourt. And one more headline from The Guardian this morning: total blackouts imminent today despite net tariff and market contracts.
The Punch newspaper, PDP crisis. Atiku Wike's men hold peace talks on Friday. 30 children, 144 Libya returnees arrive Nigeria. ASU federal government meeting deadlocked. Lecturers stage walkout. That report is on page 11. And power generation falls by 503 megawatt as workers threaten strike.
The Nation, you have the ASU story on The Nation too. Well, the headline, 2023, there's quiet in PDP as Obi meets Wike, autumn, others. Party on self-destruction path, says Rivers Governor. Ayu must go. Then on the top mast, rain to pound Lagos, Ogu, Osho, Oyo, Ondo, Ekiti, and Edo states. Conditions of remaining 27 train attack victims critical, says negotiator. And then just by the side there, don't lose hope, IBB tells Nigerians. You can find that on page 3.
Some international papers this morning. Let's begin with the Financial Times. 3 headlines here. Kenya clash, rival disputes Ruto victory. And just below that, record fall in wages signals more cost of living pain for households. That's in the UK. And just below that, Patel asks High Courts to keep Rwanda torture and killings documents secret.
And this is the I paper. It says Omicron jab. Blair calls for every adult to get booster.
Sunak, this is the Times. The Times. Sunak turns on rival over moral duty to ease bills. Former Chancellor insists millions face poverty. Police will be sacked for abusing women under tighter rules.
And for the press review, we have Emmanuel Bello, who joins us from our offsite studio. Emmanuel, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Let's take a look at this day. And a shocking story on the front page. Usman says how Dambazau resisted pressure to topple Jonathan, that's the former president, he was speaking about when another former president, Yar'Adua, passed away, and how there was a lot of pressure on Dambazau to topple Jonathan, and he resisted. What are your thoughts on this development?
Well, I think it's good morning, Kechi. Good morning, India and Kenneth. Well, yeah, I was at that summit yesterday at the Blueprint event, and but even Blueprint itself as a newspaper didn't take this story from this angle. So kudos to this day for quickly getting that very, very engaging, like you call it, a very interesting story of how those events that took place during those Dambazau days. But in fact, I was listening to the lecture yesterday. I think at the point I actually missed it. So our reporter was there. I really did something, bringing this story, bringing it, giving it the kind of insightful reporting that it's been done in this day, because this is very interesting, this is very important. It goes to the heart of the matter that was discussed yesterday at the summit, at the Blueprint Summit, and it's about security, the most important thing. Every speaker after speaker yesterday were actually looking at this very, very central issue of security. And whether you like it or not, this is at the heart of the matter, the role of the military, how they perceive it and what they do. Yesterday, Dambazau was very scholarly and very professorial in the way he was dissecting the various issues. And but these insights by Usman, who was the spokesperson of the military at the time, didn't come from Dambazau himself. It came from Usman, who said he was very close to him, and he gave this insight, because tied to it is the issue of transition, the issue of the military in politics. People have spoken in the past about military takeovers. So out of desperation, you hear loose talks about whether soldiers should just strike and end this whole nightmare for everyone. But Usman now is saying that, well, that's obsolete. That's no longer what is trending. Transitions from civil to civil rule, like we just saw in Kenya, is what the whole world is applauding. And so at the center of it is that issue, but of course also paying tribute to Dambazau, who resisted the calls, taunting. So to tell you that most of the military takeovers are actually coming from the civil force, the Democrats, who ask soldiers to strike and take over. So he's saying that, look, here is an example of a man who resisted that sort of call, and that we should applaud him for doing that. In the past, normally the military will have taken over as in those kind of circumstances, but it's now saying that, look, we need to pay tribute to a man who said no to it. And that's actually, they are still getting flags from people who called them women at the time, because they didn't have the courage to strike at the time they are supposed to strike. So it's a piece of interesting history, and that this is what you only get from memoirs written by people involved in the theater of this kind of situation. But we're getting it straight from this reporting. It's an interesting aspect of the report. But yesterday, speakers were weighing on the issue of security. Dambazau was talking about regretting some of the things that were never implemented, and some of the issues. He painted a very terrible picture of how it's not just the Boko Haram, it is crisis in the Niger Delta, it's crisis in the Southeast, it's crisis all over. And so he was saying that, look, the whole country is engulfed. And now that we're faced with the transition, some other speakers were worried that, look, that will become a central issue, and that Buni, for instance, governor of Yobe State, was saying that, look, it's not worth any war, it's not worth any fight, and that we should be able to look around and see what we can do. So it was an entire summit yesterday, very strong one. It's almost as if we had a crash course on security, but interesting stories coming out of that place.
Another interesting story on the front page of This Day, Emmanuel. This Day's reporting that the federal government ASU meetings ended in deadlock. No way forward for the students, is there?
No, Kenneth. And at this point, I think ASU, we have to actually think of the student, Kenneth, just like you put in it. Maybe I'm suggesting that ASU should just call this off. These deadlocks are just going to go on and on. It's not as if the people they are sitting across the table would really care. I don't think they care. Their kids are not, in most cases, their kids are not affected. So ASU may have to just do a retrospect about all of this and take a decision based on conscience, on convictions, and pull back from these talks and actually just reopen the schools. Sadly, there are some of the aspects of those demands are not just only for their payments or for their salaries, but actually to better education in this tertiary institution. So that is a bit that needs to be that we need to worry about, because they are looking at even student welfare. It's not just about them. So a call now, this for me, this is just a personal and a passionate call to us to actually just think beyond those talks, beyond the agreements, and just call it off in the interests of maybe will I say patriotism now, and be patriotic enough, be nationalistic enough to say, okay, look, let's look at the hardship and the future. If politicians can think of the next generation, then surely the lecturer should be able to do that.
All right, well, let's look at the Punch. Its headline there, Atiku Wike's men hold peace talks on Friday. Wike is saying that a party that wants to win an election shouldn't be involved in infighting, and you're wondering who is fighting who. And then, of course, it says that Atiku camp wants it to be held in Abuja, while Huabunwa is saying if he were Atiku, he would take the next available flight to Port Harcourt. What do you make of all these? I mean, and of course, he's been meeting with Autumn OB of Labour Party, and some other people. I mean, Wike.
Yeah, well, he's meeting everyone except the one man that he should be meeting with, or the one man that should beat him, and Atiku. So you've seen him with all sorts of people, and that's what Umobua was saying yesterday on that channel's interview, when he was saying that, look, if he were Atiku should take the next plane available, rush over to Wike and sort it out. But we're seeing an increase in this kind of back and forth between Wike and Atiku, and I suspect that some other people are actually feeling it. Currently, I think Wike's concern are two. First, that IU must go, and secondly, he's worried about the fact that the PDP at the national level is dealing with through the backyard with politicians from Rivers State instead of dealing with him. And he see everywhere he goes to, he talks about his credentials, the fact that those, his projects are working for him, the fact that don't just stay in Abuja and be a politician. And he's right. If you want to campaign for a party, you do it back home. You don't do it by just hanging around the candidate. That's one point he's making. The other point that everybody is saying is that demand that IU must go. Some people say, IU himself is pushing back, saying he's not leaving. Some other people are weighing on it and say that it's such a bloodthirsty kind of call and that it's going to rattle the party. But whatever it is, it's a serious problem. And we thought Monday would be the last of it, but now it's like Friday is the new date. So let's see what Friday will hold for those talks.
Emmanuel, on the Guardian newspaper, there's a report that says wealthy Nigerians, middle-class youths in web of Naira shorting, and 4 riders there. Country at risk of all-time high money laundering. Now the report also says the request for dollar-dominated accounts is spiking. Fund managers feast on desperation for dollar assets. And meanwhile, a group is calling to outlaw domiciliary accounts and go after black money. I don't know if you've read this report and what your thoughts are.
Well, Nkechi, it's a very deep report, and in some instances you have to actually be a financial expert to understand some of the intricacies. But the simple story there is that it's saying that, look, with what that came out yesterday, that 70 years all-time inflation is hitting us, 19.64 is the new number now. Of course, that is going to affect the economy in a very, very terrible way, especially the Naira. And the Naira is really, if you look at what's happening to the Naira, it's really falling hard against the dollar. So this story is looking at almost their own patriotism, or the callous way that some people that have money in this country are actually fighting against the Naira. So it is not just the dollar. The Naira is not just up against the dollar. It's against unscrupulous, rich people who are actually doing everything to weaken the Naira, even storing money aside so that with the hope that the dollar will actually be firmer or stronger than the Naira, and then, of course, cashing on it. Just to let you know that there are people also weakening the economy apart from what is happening globally, to national economy or to the international world economy. So it's just saying that, look, even domiciliary accounts, saying that, look, all that are aspects of trying to just weaken the naira, take advantage of that weakness, make more profit against the fortunes of the nation, the national economy and us. But for the rest of us, you and I, it just, paints a bleaker picture of the hole we're in and how deep the crisis are. The fact that the naira in your hand right now, the ones you have in your account, is not probably going to be able to do, just not having the purchasing power it should have. It's just, again, a commentary on how deep and how serious the problems of the economy has gone, especially now that the purchasing power of the naira seem to be failing there. And remember that the foodstuff too that we were talking about yesterday have gone up, and many things have gone up. So getting goods and services is just going to get a lot more tougher now for the rest of us. So this story is just painting that picture, and the more you read it, the gloomier you become. And you also look at how it's now difficult, even by the experts, to see how they're able to stop this slide.
Well, Emmanuel, the former military head of state, Ibrahim Babangida, is telling Nigerians not to lose hope. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for the press preview this morning.